Katie Morgan was tired after her shift at the greenhouse. She worked as a botanist in the small human colony called New Haven. The colony sat on a planet named Arcturus Prime, far from Earth and the busy center of the galaxy. Katie was 23 years old and lived alone in a tiny apartment with her orange cat, Newton. It was Thursday afternoon and Katie needed to buy food for the week. She walked into the central market, carrying her old shopping bag. The market was busy with humans and aliens of different species. Some had blue skin, others had extra arms, and a few floated instead of walking. Katie had gotten used to seeing all kinds of beings in the colony. She was looking at vegetables when she noticed someone struggling near the high shelves. The figure was tall, maybe 8 feet, but bent over with age. Katie could see scales that were a dull bronze color and thin wings folded against a hunched back. She recognized the being as a draconi, one of the dragon-like aliens that rarely visited outer colonies anymore. The old dragon was trying to read a shopping list, but his clawed hands were shaking. He reached for a container on a high shelf but could not grab it. His breathing sounded heavy and difficult. Katie watched him try again and fail. She felt bad for him. Without thinking too much about it, Katie walked over to him. "Excuse me, sir," she said in a friendly voice. "Do you need help with your shopping?" The dragon turned to look at her. His golden eyes went wide with surprise. Up close, Katie could see wrinkles around those ancient eyes and chips in his curved horns. His breathing came in tired huffs. He looked very, very old. "You would help me, young human?" His voice was deep but rough with age. He spoke Galactic Common, the language most species used, but with a heavy accent. "Of course," Katie said with a smile. "I am shopping too." "It is no problem at all." The old dragon stared at her for a moment. He seemed both touched and confused by her offer. He told her his name was Corvanus. For the next hour, Katie helped him move through the market. She reached items on high shelves for him. She carried heavy things to his shopping cart. When the writing on labels was too small for his old eyes to read, she read the prices out loud so he could compare them. Corvanus told her he lived alone in the mountains outside the colony. He did not come to town often because the trip was too hard for his old body. Katie listened and nodded, asking him questions about what he liked to eat and how his home was. He seemed happy to talk to someone who cared. When they got to the checkout counter, Corvanus tried to use his credit chip to pay. His claws made it hard to hold the small device. The total cost was 340 credits. But when the system checked his account, it only had 215 credits. The human cashier, a young man named Danny, looked annoyed. "Look, you either have the money or you don't," Danny said in a rude tone. "There are people waiting behind you." Katie saw shame flash across Corvanus's face. The old dragon started taking items out of his bags. He was trying to decide what he could live without. Katie looked at the items he had chosen. Most of them were basic things he needed. Protein paste for food, water purification tablets, medicine ointment for his scales, and simple vegetables. Nothing fancy. "Just survival items. Wait," Katie said quickly. She pulled out her own credit chip. "I will pay the rest." "Young one, you cannot do this," Corvanus said. His voice was thick with emotion. "This is too much money." "It is only 125 credits," Katie said gently. She knew that was almost a quarter of her weekly pay, but looking at the old dragon's grateful face, she did not care. "Please let me help." The old dragon's eyes became wet as if he might cry. "You have no idea what you have done today, Katie Morgan." "No idea at all." Danny processed the payment without saying anything else. Katie helped Corvanus pack his groceries into bags. Then she helped him load everything into an automated carrier that would deliver the items to his mountain home. As they walked outside together, Corvanus moved slowly. Katie matched his pace without complaint. When they reached the transport station where he would catch a ride home, the old dragon stopped. He took Katie's hand in both of his large claws. His grip was gentle but firm. He looked deeply into her eyes. "You have shown kindness to one whom most have forgotten," Corvanus said in a serious voice. "The universe has a way of remembering such things." Katie thought it was a sweet, if strange, way of saying thank you. She waved goodbye as he shuffled toward the transport. Then she went back into the market to finish her own shopping. As Katie picked out her food for the week, she felt good about what she had done. It was nice to help someone who needed it. She did not think about the old dragon's cryptic words. She did not wonder why he spoke as if her small act of kindness was something special. Katie just bought her noodles and vegetables. paid for them with what was left of her money, and walked home through the busy streets of New Haven. The twin suns of Arcturus Prime were setting, painting the sky orange and purple. It was a normal evening, a quiet evening. Katie had no idea that in just a few hours everything in her life would change forever. She did not know that the old dragon she had helped was not just any elderly being. She did not know that her simple choice to be kind would shake the entire galaxy. She just went home to her small apartment, fed Newton, and started making dinner. The day felt ordinary, peaceful. Just another Thursday in her simple life. But high above the planet, in the deep darkness of space, something was already beginning to happen. Messages were being sent across the stars, ships were being prepared, and a fleet of the most powerful warships in the sector was about to change course. All because a young human woman had bought groceries for an old dragon, expecting nothing in return. 6 hours had passed since Katie helped the old dragon at the market. She was now in her small apartment cooking a simple dinner of noodles and vegetables. The news played quietly in the background. Newton walked between her legs, hoping she would feed him early. Everything felt normal and peaceful. Then the sky lit up. At first, Katie thought it was lightning. But the light was wrong. It was too blue and lasted too long. She walked to her window and looked up. What she saw made her forget to breathe. 12 enormous ships were coming down through the atmosphere. Each one was as big as a city block. These were not the normal cargo ships or small military vessels Katie usually saw. These were warships. They were sleek and deadly looking, with hulls that seemed to glow with energy shields. The design was clearly draconic. The ships had elegant curves and armor plating that looked like dragon scales. The ships moved in perfect formation. And they were coming straight toward her neighborhood. Katie's communication terminal started ringing with alerts. Emergency messages flooded her screen. The colony's defense force was going on high alert. News channels were filled with panicked reporters talking about a possible invasion. Through her window, Katie could see neighbors running into the streets. Everyone was pointing at the sky. "This is Colony Defense Commander Lisa Hayes," a stern voice announced over the emergency system. "All residents must stay in their homes. We have multiple unknown vessels entering our airspace. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." Katie's heart pounded as she watched the ships get bigger and bigger. The lead ship was more decorated than the others. It had golden designs along its hull. It began to slow down directly above her apartment building. The other ships formed a protective circle around it. Then someone knocked on her door. Katie jumped and nearly dropped the knife she was using. Newton ran under the couch to hide. The knocking came again, louder and more urgent. Katie looked through the peephole in her door. She could see 2 figures wearing fancy armor that shined like black glass. They were draconi, both young and powerful looking. Their armor had complex markings that Katie did not recognize. With shaking hands, Katie opened the door. "Katie Morgan?" the taller one asked. His voice was formal and respectful, like a soldier speaking. "Yes?" Katie's voice came out weak and scared. "I am Captain Zethris of the Eternal Flight Guard. This is Lieutenant Marana. We have been sent by High Elder Corvanus, last of the Ancient Council and keeper of the Eternal Flame. He requests your presence on the flagship Stormcaller. Right away." Katie's mind was spinning. "Corvanus? The old dragon from the market? I don't understand. What is happening? Why are there warships over my home?" Zethris and Marana looked at each other. Then Marana spoke, her voice softer than the captain's. "Miss Morgan," she said, "what you did today has caused quite a reaction. The High Elder is one of the most respected figures in all of Draconi society. When word spread that a human had shown him such kindness, that you treated him with respect and even spent your own money to help him, well, our people were shocked and deeply moved. But I just helped him shop," Katie said weakly. "It was not anything special." "To you, perhaps," Zethris replied. "But you must understand something, Miss Morgan. High Elder Corvanus is not just an old dragon. He is over 7,000 years old. He commanded space fleets when your species was still discovering fire. He has advised empires and ended wars. He has personally saved billions of lives across dozens of species, and yet in his old age, living quietly in the mountains, he has been mostly ignored and dismissed by those who meet him." Mirana continued the explanation. "We sent agents to look at the market's security footage. We watched how you treated him, with real kindness, without knowing who he was, without expecting anything back. Do you understand how rare that is in today's galaxy? Katie leaned against the doorframe. Her legs felt weak. I still don't understand why there are 12 warships here. Zethris actually smiled at that. Miss Morgan, when the Eternal Flight Guard learned that someone had treated our High Elder with such respect and generosity, the entire fleet demanded to come. These are not just any ships. These are the personal guard vessels of the 12 houses of Draconus Prime. They are the most elite fighting force in this sector of space. Every commander insisted on the honor of coming to escort you to meet the High Elder properly. They would not accept no for an answer. Mirana held out a credit chip. I also brought you this. 125 credits. The exact amount you spent on the High Elder's groceries. He insisted we return it to you immediately. Katie took the chip. Her hands were numb. Her mind was still trying to process everything. Also, Zethris added, the High Elder has invited you to join him for dinner on the Stormcaller, if you would honor him with your presence. He wishes to thank you properly and speak with you more. Will you come? Katie looked past them at the huge ship floating in the sky. She could see crowds gathering in the streets below. News drones were already flying around her building, cameras pointed at her door. Her quiet, normal life had just been turned completely upside down. But she remembered the old dragon's kind eyes. She remembered his dignity even though his body was weak. She remembered the way he had held her hand and thanked her. Okay, she heard herself say, I will come. The interior of the Stormcaller was beyond anything Katie had ever seen. The corridors were wide enough for Draconi in their full size to walk comfortably. The ceilings were very high and covered with glowing crystals that gave off warm golden light. Every surface seemed carved from a single piece of dark metal that gleamed like polished stone. There were patterns everywhere that might have been art or might have been writing in a language Katie could not read. Zethris and Mirana walked beside her through the ship. Everywhere they went, Draconi crew members stopped to stare. Some nodded at her with respect. Others touched their clawed fists to their chests in what looked like a salute. Katie felt very uncomfortable in her simple work clothes and messy hair. They are showing respect, Mirana explained quietly when she noticed Katie's discomfort. Word has already spread through the fleet about what you did. They arrived at a huge dining hall that took Katie's breath away. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars above and the planet below. A long table that looked like it was made of frozen fire sat in the center of the room. It was set with dishes and cups that seemed to be made from precious metals and jewels. And at the head of the table sat Corvanus. He looked the same, but also different. He still had the same old appearance, the same faded scales and tired eyes. But there was something about the way he sat, about the way every other Draconi in the room faced toward him, that made Katie suddenly understand. This was not just an old dragon. This was someone who had commanded respect for thousands of years. Katie Morgan, Corvanus said, slowly standing up. You honor me with your presence. Sir, Katie started to say, but Corvanus raised his clawed hand. Please sit. Let us eat first, then we will talk. The dinner that followed was incredible. Food from a dozen different worlds was brought out, each dish more exotic than the last. Corvanus explained each one, sharing stories of where he first tasted these foods, the people he met, and the places he had seen. Other important Draconi joined them, including an admiral named Vex and a diplomat called Saria. Both of them treated Katie with warmth and curiosity. Tell me, Katie Morgan, Admiral Vex said during the meal. His deep voice sounded curious, not threatening. What made you decide to help the High Elder today? Surely you had your own problems and schedule. Katie thought about it. He needed help. He was having trouble. How could I not help? The Draconi at the table looked at each other with meaningful expressions. So simple, Saria whispered, and yet so deep. After dinner, Corvanus invited Katie to walk with him to an observation deck. The old dragon moved slowly, and Katie walked at his pace without rushing him. When they reached the deck, they stood together looking out at the stars. And that was when Corvanus told her the truth. Corvanus and Katie stood on the observation deck looking out at the stars. The old dragon was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a soft voice. I must apologize to you, young one, he said. I was not completely honest with you today. Katie turned to him, confused. What do you mean? When I came to your market, it was not an accident, Corvanus admitted. His voice sounded heavy with regret. I go there every few months. I am testing people, watching them. I want to see how I will be treated when I appear as nothing more than a weak-old creature, without title or power or any signs of importance. It is something I have done for many years on many different worlds. You were testing people? Katie asked. She felt a small spark of anger or disappointment. Yes, Corvanus said heavily, and I am ashamed to say that time after time I have been met with coldness, with rudeness, with cruelty even. Store workers treat me like I am bothering them. People push past me without caring. Security guards watch me with suspicion, thinking I am there to cause trouble. In 1,000 such visits across the galaxy, maybe 5 or 6 beings have shown me basic courtesy, and none have done what you did today. He turned to face her fully. His ancient eyes were serious and sad. You are the first, Katie Morgan. The first to not only help me without being asked, but to spend your own limited money to make sure I had what I needed. You treated an old stranger with dignity and kindness, expecting nothing in return. In my 7,000 years of life, I have learned that such actions reveal the truest measure of a being's character. Katie did not know what to say. She felt strange about being tested. But looking at the old dragon's sincere face, she could not find it in herself to be angry. Why does it matter so much? She asked instead. Corvanus sighed. The sound was like wind blowing through a canyon. Because I am dying, child. My time is coming to an end. I am tired. So very tired. But I have knowledge, resources, and influence that must be passed on to someone worthy. I have been searching for years to find a being who has the qualities I value most. Compassion, selflessness, integrity. Today, I found that being. I found you, me. Katie's voice came out as a squeak. But I am nobody. I'm just a botanist. I live in a tiny apartment with a cat. I don't even have savings. I'm not special. You are far more special than you know, Corvanus said gently. And that is exactly why you are worthy. Tell me, Katie Morgan, what would you do if you had unlimited resources? If you could do anything you wanted? Katie thought about the question. I would want to help people. Maybe expand the greenhouse program on Arcturus Prime. Get fresh food to the outer settlements that cannot afford it. Maybe pay for education programs for kids who cannot go to school. I don't know exactly. Just make things a little better for people, I guess. Corvanus made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. That is exactly the kind of answer I hope to hear. Not conquest. Not power. Not wealth for its own sake. Simply the desire to help others. He paused, then spoke the words that would change Katie's life forever. Katie Morgan, I would like to make you my heir. Katie was certain she had heard wrong. Your what? My heir? I wish to pass on my estates, my wealth, my titles, and my seat on the Draconi Council to you. You would become, in effect, a dragon lady of the eternal houses, with all the responsibilities and privileges that come with it. Katie's mind went completely blank. Then it flooded with 1,000 thoughts at once. That's impossible. I'm human. I don't know anything about Draconi culture. I can't do what you do. This is crazy. Breathe, child, Corvanus said with kind amusement in his voice. I am not asking you to decide tonight. I am simply asking you to think about it. Consider the possibility. You would have advisors to guide you, teachers to train you, protectors to keep you safe. You would learn everything you need to know. And you would have the resources to help people on a scale you have never imagined possible. He placed a heavy claw on her shoulder. The weight was gentle but firm. But know this, regardless of your decision about the inheritance, you have already earned the gratitude of the Draconi people. The kindness you showed me today will not be forgotten, ever. Katie looked out at the stars. Her head was spinning. She was trying to understand how buying groceries for an old dragon had led to this impossible moment. Corvanus let her stand in silence for a while. Then he spoke again. I know this is overwhelming. Take time to think. Talk to people you trust. Consider what this would mean for your life. I have waited years to find the right person. I can wait a few more days for your answer. Katie nodded slowly. She could not form words yet. Come, Corvanus said. Let me have Zethris and Marana take you home. Rest, think, and when you are ready, we will talk again. Katie returned to her apartment at midnight. Zethris and Marana came with her. They explained that they had been assigned as her personal guards, whether she liked it or not. The 12 warships remained floating over the colony. The local population was still anxious. The colony government had no idea what was happening, or why elite Draconi vessels were interested in one junior botanist. Katie did not sleep that night. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Corvanus's earnest face. She heard his offer echoing in her mind. His heir, a dragon lady, resources beyond imagining, the weight of responsibility that came with it all. Newton, sensing her worry, curled up on her chest. He purred loudly until she stroked his soft fur. "What do I do, Newton?" she whispered to the cat. "I'm not qualified for this. I barely finished my degree. I've never led anyone. I don't know anything about Draconi politics or culture or any of it." Newton just purred louder, which did not help. By morning, Katie had messages from everyone she knew. Her boss at the greenhouse demanded to know why warships were hovering over the colony, and if it had anything to do with her. Her parents on Earth were panicked after seeing news reports. Her college friend Claire was asking if Katie had somehow started an intergalactic incident. There was also a message from the colony governor, desperately requesting a meeting to understand the situation. And there was a gentle message from Corvanus. It simply said, "Take your time. There is no pressure. Come visit me in the mountains when you are ready to talk again." Katie decided she needed advice from someone she trusted. She called her grandmother, Helen, back on Earth. Helen was 93 years old, sharp as ever, and had always been Katie's closest confidant. After Katie explained the entire bizarre situation, there was a long pause on the video call. "Let me get this straight," Helen finally said. "You helped an old man with his groceries and now he wants to make you a space dragon princess?" "That's really oversimplifying it, Grandma, but yes, basically." Another pause. Then Helen asked, "Katie, honey, let me ask you something. When you helped this Corvanus, did it feel right?" "Yes," Katie said without hesitation. "It felt like the right thing to do." "And when he talks about using his resources to help people, does that speak to your heart?" Katie thought about the outer settlements she had visited during her work. She remembered the children who did not have enough to eat, the families struggling to afford basic medicine, the educational opportunities that only wealthy people could access. "Yes," Katie said, "very much." "Then it sounds to me like you already know your answer," Helen said gently. "You're scared, and that's natural. This is a big, strange thing, but you have always had a good heart, Katie. You have always wanted to make a difference. Maybe this is your chance to do that on a bigger scale than you ever imagined. But what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" Helen laughed. The sound was warm and comforting across the vast distance of space between them. "My dear girl, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to care and be willing to try. That is more than can be said for most people in positions of power. Besides, didn't you say this Corvanus fellow has lived for 7,000 years? I bet he knows what he is doing when he picks his successor." After they said goodbye, Katie sat for a long time in her apartment. She thought about her grandmother's words. She thought about Corvanus's kind eyes. She thought about all the people she could help if she had real resources. And slowly, carefully, Katie made her decision. Corvanus grew weaker as the months passed. His breathing became more labored, his movements slower, but his mind remained sharp and his spirit gentle. Katie visited him every day, sitting with him in his mountain home, talking about everything and nothing. "I am not afraid of death," he told her one quiet afternoon. They sat on his terrace watching the sun set over the valleys. "I have lived a long life, a full life, and I am leaving the work in good hands. Your hands, Katie Morgan. That brings me peace." Katie held his clawed hand in both of hers. "You taught me everything. I wouldn't be here without you." "No, child," Corvanus said softly. "You were already who you needed to be. I simply gave you the opportunity to become it on a larger scale. The kindness, the compassion, the integrity, those were always yours." 3 weeks later, on a quiet morning in spring with Katie holding his claw, the ancient dragon passed away in his sleep. His last words were a whisper of gratitude for the gift of her friendship. The funeral was attended by thousands. Representatives from every species in the sector came to pay respects. Leaders and common people alike traveled across the stars to say goodbye to the old dragon who had touched so many lives. But Katie knew that Corvanus, at his heart, had been a humble soul who valued simple kindness above all else. So she made sure the ceremony included something unusual. She opened the doors to everyone, not just important dignitaries. Citizens from across the systems came to honor the dragon who had quietly helped so many over his long life. Katie stood at the front of the ceremony, wearing the formal robes of her position. She spoke about Corvanus not as a legendary figure, but as a gentle teacher and dear friend. She told the story of how they met, how he had tested her without her knowing, and how one small act of kindness had changed both their lives. He taught me that power means nothing without compassion, Katie said to the assembled crowd, that true greatness lies not in conquest but in service, that the measure of a life is not in years but in the positive difference we make for others. I will carry these lessons with me always. As the new full holder of Corvanus's seat and resources, Katie faced important choices about how to use her influence. Some advisors pushed for political maneuvering, expanding Draconi power, making strategic alliances for advantage. But Katie remembered why she had been chosen in the first place. She established the Corvanus Foundation, dedicated to supporting beings in need across the galaxy. It provided education, food security, medical care, and disaster relief without regard to species, politics, or ability to pay. It was exactly what the old dragon would have wanted and exactly what Katie's heart told her was right. The Foundation's symbol was simple, 2 hands reaching toward each other in help and friendship. Within a year, it became recognized across hundreds of worlds. Within 5 years, it had helped millions of beings, but Katie's favorite project remained one of the simplest. Working with the Council, she established a program called Dignity for Elders. It ensured that elderly beings of all species received the support, respect, and care they deserved. The program provided home assistance, medical care, social activities, and most importantly, regular visits and human connection, so that no elder would be forgotten or dismissed as Corvanus had been for so long. 5 years after that day in the market, Katie found herself back on Arcturus Prime. She walked through the central market, now greatly expanded thanks to the projects she had funded. Families shopped together, children laughed and played, people from a dozen species traded and talked peacefully. She passed the exact spot where she had first seen Corvanus struggling to reach the high shelf. A young Draconi couple was there now. The female was helping an elderly human man with his shopping bags. The man smiled with gratitude, and the young Draconi woman smiled back warmly. Katie felt tears in her eyes. This, she thought. This is what it was all for, Lady Morgan, a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to find Zethris, now Admiral Zethris, who had become one of her closest friends and most trusted advisors over the years. The council meeting starts in an hour. The ship is ready when you are. I'll be right there, Katie said. Before leaving, she bought a small bag of the local fruit that Corvanus had loved. She walked to a memorial statue that had been built in the market plaza. It showed Corvanus in his prime, strong and noble but with kind eyes. Katie set the fruit at the base of the statue. She touched her fingers to her lips, then to the dragon's carved claws, a gesture of remembrance and love that she performed every time she visited. As she walked toward the transport that would take her to the council chambers, Katie thought about that ordinary Thursday afternoon years ago. How she had made a simple choice to help someone who needed it. How that one small act of kindness had changed everything. She had learned the most important lesson of all. The universe did not change through grand gestures alone. It changed through millions of small choices made every day by ordinary beings trying to be good to one another. A store clerk treating a customer with patience. A neighbor helping another carry groceries. A stranger offering directions to someone who is lost. A child sharing their lunch with a classmate who has none. These moments, these tiny acts of decency and compassion, they were what held civilization together. They were what made life worth living. Corvanus had seen something in her that day at the market. He had seen not just kindness, but the potential for sustained, principled compassion that could change systems and cultures and lives. Now, walking toward her ship with the twin suns of Arcturus Prime setting behind her, Katie understood his final lesson. Power and position did not make someone worthy. Actions did. Choices did. The decision to see another being struggle and respond with help rather than indifference, that was what truly mattered. And if a junior botanist with barely enough money to pay rent could change the galaxy by buying an old dragon's groceries, then anyone could make a difference. Anyone at all. All it took was paying attention, caring enough to act, and having the courage to help when help was needed. That was the true legacy Corvanus had left her. Not wealth or titles or political influence, though she now had all those things, but the understanding that every being mattered, That kindness was never wasted, that the smallest acts could ripple outward in ways impossible to predict. As her ship lifted off, Katie looked down at the market below. She watched the people going about their lives, each one carrying their own struggles and dreams and hopes. She saw a universe full of beings who needed help, who needed hope, who needed someone to care, and she promised herself and the memory of a wise old dragon that she would never forget what it felt like to be ordinary, to struggle, to need help, because that memory would guide every choice she made from this day forward. The Stormcaller and her sister ships fell into formation around Katie's vessel. They carried Lady Morgan of the Eternal Houses toward her next meeting, her next challenge, her next opportunity to honor the old dragon who had seen the best in a young woman who had simply chosen to be kind. Katie settled into her seat and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in whatever realm ancient dragons went when they passed, she'd like to think Corvanus was smiling, proud of what she had become, glad that his long search had finally ended with her. She touched the small pendant she wore around her neck, a gift from Corvanus before he died. It was a simple thing, a small crystal that glowed faintly with inner light, but to Katie it represented everything. The connection between two unlikely friends, the power of a single kind act, the responsibility she now carried, and as her ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying her toward whatever the future held, Katie Morgan made herself a promise. She would live every day trying to be worthy of the trust that had been placed in her. She would remember that she had been chosen not because she was special, but because she had chosen to be kind when kindness was needed, and she would spend the rest of her life making sure that no one, no matter how old or how forgotten, would ever be dismissed or ignored again, not if she had anything to say about it, because in the end that was what it all came down to. Not power, not politics, not grand strategies or ancient traditions, just one person seeing another person who needed help and choosing to care. That was the lesson. That was the legacy. That was everything. 3 days later, Katie stood in Corvanus's mountain home. The house was beautiful, built into a cliff that overlooked huge valleys filled with alien flowers. The old dragon had been surprised but pleased when Katie contacted him requesting a visit. "I've thought about your offer," Katie said. She stood straighter than she felt, trying to look confident. "And I have conditions." Corvanus's eyes gleamed with interest. "Go on. First, I need time to learn. Really learn. I don't want to just be a figurehead, someone in name only. If I'm going to do this, I want to understand Draconi culture, history, and politics. Everything. I want to earn this position, not just be given it." "Wise," Corvanus rumbled. "I agree. Second, I want to start small. Use some of the resources for projects on Arcturus Prime first. I need to learn how to manage things on a scale I can understand before tackling bigger problems. I need to build up to this, not be thrown into the deep end right away." Smart thinking. I agree. Third, and this is absolutely non-negotiable, I don't want to be shut away from regular people. I don't want to lose touch with what life is like for ordinary beings just trying to get by. That connection is important to me. It's what led me to help you in the first place. Corvanus was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "This last condition pleases me most of all. It shows you understand the trap that power can create, the isolation that often comes with it." "Yes, Katie Morgan, I agree to all your conditions." "Then I accept," Katie said. Her voice only shook a little. "I'll become your heir. I'll do my best to live up to what you see in me." The old dragon approached her. To her surprise, he lowered his massive head until his forehead touched hers gently. It was a gesture of respect and love that Katie understood without words. "You already have lived up to it, child," Corvanus whispered. "You already have." What followed was a whirlwind that Katie would remember for the rest of her life. The announcement of Corvanus's choice sent shockwaves through the Draconi community and the wider galaxy. A human heir to one of the ancient council seats was something that had never happened before. There were celebrations among those who saw it as progress. There were protests from those who saw it as a betrayal of tradition. Katie met with Draconi leaders from across the stars. She met diplomats from dozens of different species. She was introduced to scholars who would become her teachers. She was fitted for formal robes that felt impossibly heavy. She was taught basic Draconi customs, like how to hold her hands when greeting elders, how to speak in formal councils, and hundreds of other small details that made her head spin. But true to his word, Corvallis let her start small. Her first project was expanding the greenhouse on Arcturus Prime. She turned it into a full agricultural center that could supply fresh food to 3 neighboring settlements at affordable prices. It was not glamorous or exciting, but it was real, solid good that she could see and touch. Katie worked closely with the greenhouse staff she already knew. She hired more workers from the community. She made sure everyone was paid fairly. She listened to their ideas about what crops would grow best and what the settlements needed most. The project took 3 months to complete. When the first shipment of fresh vegetables arrived at Settlement Gamma, a poor mining outpost that usually only had protein paste to eat, Katie went there personally. She watched children bite into fresh apples for the first time in their lives. She saw parents cry with gratitude. That was when Katie knew she had made the right choice. And through it all, Corvallis was there. Patient and encouraging, teaching her not just facts but wisdom earned over thousands of years. Power is not about control, he told her one evening as they watched the sunset from his mountain home. It is about responsibility. Every choice you make will affect lives. Some people will praise you. Some will curse you. But if you make your choices from a place of compassion and wisdom, you will be able to face yourself each morning. That is what matters. Katie absorbed every lesson, every story, every piece of guidance. She made mistakes. She stumbled through unfamiliar protocols. Sometimes she felt overwhelmed and wanted to quit, but she kept going. She was driven by the memory of an old dragon struggling to reach items on a high shelf, and her simple instinct to help. Katie learned 3 Draconi dialects. The languages were hard, with sounds humans were not built to make. But she practiced every day until she could at least make herself understood. She studied Draconi history, learning about the Great Wars and the long peace that followed. She learned about the Council of Elders and how they governed. She learned about the 12 houses and their ancient rivalries and alliances. She also learned about Corvallis himself. His full history was astonishing. He had indeed commanded fleets in wars that happened before humans left Earth. He had negotiated the Treaty of 7 Suns that brought peace to an entire sector. He had established schools on 20 different worlds. He had saved entire species from extinction through careful diplomacy and generous aid. Why did you give all that up? Katie asked him one day. Why retreat to a mountain and live alone? Corvallis smiled sadly. Because I was tired, child. After 7,000 years, I had seen too much death. Too much suffering. I wanted peace, quiet, a simple life. But I also knew my responsibilities were not yet finished. I had to find someone to carry on the work. Someone who understood that true power lies in service, not domination. He looked at her with those ancient golden eyes. I am glad I found you, Katie Morgan. You give an old dragon hope for the future. Katie's second project was establishing a free medical clinic in New Haven. Anyone could come, regardless of species or ability to pay. The clinic treated everything from common illnesses to serious injuries. Katie hired doctors and nurses from the community and brought in specialists from other worlds. Her third project was a scholarship program for students who could not afford higher education. She funded 50 full scholarships in the first year, allowing young people to study anything from engineering to art. With each project, Katie learned more about management, about working with different species and cultures, about the complex balance between helping people and letting them maintain their dignity and independence. She also learned that not everyone was happy with her new role. Some Draconi traditionalists openly opposed a human holding such an important position. They sent her angry messages. They protested outside the council chambers. A few even made threats, though Zethris and Marana made sure Katie was always protected. Katie tried to meet with the protesters. She listened to their concerns. She explained that she was not trying to replace Draconi traditions but to honor them by serving as Corvallis had served, with compassion and wisdom. Some were convinced. Others remained hostile. Katie learned to accept that she could not please everyone. Leadership means making choices that some will hate, Corvallis told her. The question is not whether everyone agrees with you. The question is whether you can look at yourself in the mirror and know you did what you believed was right. 2 years passed. Katie, now formally known as Lady Morgan of the Eternal Houses and Keeper of the Western Flame, had grown into her role in ways even she had not expected. She had learned to navigate the complex politics of the council with increasing skill. She had successfully implemented 7 major humanitarian projects across 4 star systems. She had earned the respect of many who had initially doubted her, including some of her harshest critics. But she never forgot her roots. Once a month, without fanfare or guards, she would visit markets on various worlds. She would simply talk with people, learn about their struggles and needs. More than once, she quietly helped someone who needed it, buying groceries or medicine, never revealing who she really was. It was during one of these quiet visits that she met an elderly human woman struggling with heavy bags. Katie helped her carry them home. The woman invited her in for tea. They talked for an hour about simple things: the weather, gardening, the woman's grandchildren. As Katie left, the woman hugged her and said, "Thank you, dear. It's nice to know there are still kind people in the world." Katie walked back to where Zethris and Marana were waiting. Hidden and watchful, she had tears in her eyes. "Are you well, Lady Morgan?" Marana asked with concern. "I'm perfect," Katie said, smiling, "just remembering why I do this." But joy would soon turn to sorrow. Corvanus's health was declining,